it's really worth noting that even for Source Group International, that we've actually taken part in providing diversity and inclusion training, really trying to eliminate bias in the hiring process from our side as well, when we're trying to support our clients and other organizations. So there's always kind of those base layer points that every business can really start delving into. And I guess, Manjuri, for you, how do unconscious biases impact leadership decisions, and what steps can leaders take to mitigate their influence?
Yeah, I think, like any other people topic, right? So we're talking about the realm of work, but I guess unconscious bias impacts us on a daily basis, on usual, even, the simple, probably, when we see somebody walking on the street and how we react, etc. Also is sometimes unconscious bias and stereotyping and things that we've grown up with and beliefs that we've grown up with, etc. And it impacts people processes, it impacts decisions, like Elisabeth mentioned. To begin with, I think one of the areas where we see the starting is hiring, then in the other moment that matters is promotions. There's also stats that says that you have more, of course, as at the moment you start climbing the ladder, you'll see the number of men to women, there's a gap. There's also a gap when it comes to rewards, so compensation. There's, you can talk about different areas where you talk about talent reviews or performance evaluations, etc. When you're looking and comparing the work across different people, unconscious bias creeps in, and different kinds of unconscious bias actually creeps in. There something that have also, and there's researchers that have talked about it, but there's also evidence in anecdotal conversations, etc., where especially women in tech say that when we were doing a bit of a research and the first start actually happened, we heard that when you have these projects being assigned, especially in technology, maybe Elisabeth can throw light on this, and you're in the room, you tend to get probably the easier responsibility ones and not the more complex ones. And this is something that I've heard from my peers who are women in tech. And this is something that they had to always fight for. Okay, no, give me bigger scope, give me bigger responsibility. So assigning responsibilities is also something that becomes a challenge. Communication is another way of where you can see the unconscious bias actually creeping in and reflecting. I take an example of my former employer, our former employer, Zalando. So I was in the midst of the hypergrowth period for Zalando. And it was interesting because, yes, we had those years when we were chasing 1,000 engineers to hire, and those were the kind of targets. And yes, we did it in an amazing speed, and we are super proud of that. But there was a time, somewhere around 2017 and 18, when we realized that, yes, we've kind of ended up with a lot of men, and the balance is not really fitting in when we talk about the gender diversity there. But that was a good call. We started working on at that point of time. We had this person she was a project manager. Then she actually became the head of DE&I for Zalando at that stage. Talking about Sara Cordovano, a great lady. If you just Google her name, and she has an excellent book also that she's put down for practical tips on DE&I. And that's when we started this whole activity around how do we pick up the topic of DEI and start with the ERGs in place. How do you deal with these unconscious biases? What you asked, Michael, as a second one, and a lot of things. I think I'll refer to putting structure in place on certain things. For example, when you talk about, I think Elisabeth touched upon this as well. So when we are talking about hiring, of course, starting with what good looks like in an objective manner. So that's one of the key areas. We are looking at attracting. Again, Elisabeth mentioned about job descriptions. I'll talk about reach outs and even your employer branding page, etc. You can always use tools like Text.io, tools like Data People. There are a lot of these augmented writing tools that can help you with inclusive language coming through. So that's super concrete in that fashion. When you talk about the second phase, which is more about assessing people who are coming through the process or candidates who are coming through the process, put a competency-based or a skill-based hiring process in view. So it's completely objective. There are tools today in the market based on Gen AI like Screen Loop and MetaView, which can help you here as well. Something that interviewers don't like to do or leaders don't like to do is taking notes during interviews and then parsing it and really giving that whole scorecard. But thanks to Gen AI, there are tools to do that now. And it's so interesting because it can give you a summary. And the best part is when you're discussing the candidate's results, and earlier you could hear sometimes hiring managers say, yeah, I don't have the feel for this. Like, I don't want the feel. Go back to you can ask the bot, it'll tell you what was right, what was wrong as per the requirements. What did the candidate say? What did the interviewer say? And give you an objective assessment. So use technology to your help and structure the interview with competencies, skills, whatever you're using. Another way of putting structure around this. There's something called as a DEI audit. This is either you can take it in help of a consultant, an experienced consultant that comes in and looks at different employee processes in your organization and looks at where there are gaps in play and how those gaps can be measured up as well. There are things that companies have resorted to, like blind recruiting, where you can cover the image or cover the picture or cover one part of the name, etc. Looking at things. Of course, diverse pipelines when it comes to ensure that, again, when I talked about the commitment from the top, one of the things that we do in our organization is looking at the representation, especially for gender, looking at the representation, making each leader accountable for increasing the representation in the organization for women. So when you're hiring for maybe a -1 of the C-suite, and if you're looking for that area, then focus on the fact that we are going to reach out so that you have a more diverse pool of candidates. So I think these are different ways of looking at reducing these unconscious bias, ensuring that not just one person makes the decision, you have a group making the decision on objective basis, etc. There are lots of tools also in place that help you out today, but I just took some examples, some names that could come into play in the hiring space for sure.